While spending some time in the great outdoors, I was inspired to try to come up with a quilt that would be a patchwork instead of an applique, but a fun nature scene. And of course, I've been playing with some of Elizabeth Hartman's fantastic patterns, and I learned a great seam allowance trick I'm going to show you today. Let's get started. That's right, I simply used some fantastic pre-cut 2.5-inch strips. Now, these are from Engle Batik. This is the Blue Moon pack, and I used one and some of my second one. So when you're getting your supplies, and we have a link in the description below if you need, make sure you get 2 of these packets, and then get yourself a yard of a complementary green. This one's obviously also from Engle Batik, and I just love the texture in it. But I took my yard and I also pre-cut it down into 2.5-inch wide strips, because the entire construction of this awesome quilt behind me, check it out, is all made from 2.5-inch strips, and it's basically all vertical seam allowances. But I'm going to teach you also how to make these branches for our trees and a couple of the other fun things for the details of your mountains and your sky to come together. So let's just dive right in today. Also in that link below, I've got a fantastic printable, and as you're looking at the printable, I want to point out a couple of things real quick, because we're just going to work on this one seam at a time together today. First of all, you see these numbers in the printable. Those numbers are the length of the strip cut. You do not need to add 1/2 inch. I figured out the math. So where this says 18, you're going to cut an 18-inch wide strip there. Sorry, 18-inch long, not wide. Then the other thing I want to point out is the sections of the tree branches are labeled A, B, B again because it's the same thing, C and D. And the information you're going to need is written down the sides there. And I'm going to show you a fun fabric saving trick on that cutting and setup. So let's dive right into this. So what I want to do is I want to first build my vertical pieces that I need. And so one of the ones we're going to be needing pretty soon is one of these sky, mountain, and kind of water combos that I'm going to need. And you're thinking, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I should have pointed out that I took that strip set apart and I really saw it as 3 color families. I saw a wonderful purple color family, the dark blues, and then the light blues there. So this is my sky, my water, and then the purples are for my mountains. And there was actually even 1 or 2 in the packet that I didn't use because the colors just didn't feel right. And that's the fun of being creative with pre-cuts. I've grabbed a few of the pieces for my scraps, but I haven't cut them down yet. So what I was starting to say, let's build this one right here. I need a 7-inch piece of sky, and I want you to be as accurate as possible when you're doing these. So I'm going to go ahead and take this here, and I'm looking down, let's see, 20, oh, I'm going the wrong way. This always drives my brain crazy. So let me slide over here where I'm at 10, and I can go to 17, and I'm going to look at that line there. So I'm just cutting a 7-inch piece of sky. Okay, and then I need the mountain piece, and that piece is going to be 18 inches. Okay, so 12 down to my 30 mark should be 18. And of course you could just do kind of a rough little cut there. And then the last piece on my blue that I want will be 6 inches, and my 6-inch cut there, 12 to 18. I can do quick math on the set in front of all these cameras and lights. Still feels pretty good. My high schoolers will be proud of me today. Okay, so now what happens though is we're going to join our seams. Whenever we're seeing some sort of a fun angle come together, like the sky where it hits the mountain, those are just going to be simple 45-degree seams. And I just look at the picture and I build it just as I'm going, and I'm using batik, so there's no real wrong side, but I'm setting this what I would consider right sides up. And then this piece here is going to come in here, and I want my angle to come across down it this way. So if I lay these here and I sew this here and I fold it up, and I literally do that. I just practice each piece and I make sure that my angle is running like it is in the photograph. And then all I'm doing is the same exact trick we've been teaching you for years when we're putting our bindings together. This is just a mitered seam. So I'm going to sew, here, let me slow down a little bit. I'm going to sew effectively from this corner all the way through this corner, but I'm going to line those square pieces up nice, and that's doing all the math for us. Isn't that great? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to stitch through, make sure I've got all my equipment ready. Hey, I'm back. Don't worry about me. Now I'm really back. So this goes ahead, it sews on through, and then of course I'm going to test it before I cut it. So I'm going to lay it back on the picture, and I'm going to make sure that my line is running just like it is in the picture there. At that point, I know it's awesome, and I can come in and I can go ahead and just trim this with roughly a 1/4 inch seam allowance in there. Then I want to go ahead and come to my ironing station, and I am spending the time to try to press to the dark side, so I'm holding the dark fabric in the air, and then I'm just going to iron that smooth through there like that. Now, let's look at the quilt for a second here. The strip I'm starting to pre-assemble, I believe is this one right in here. So what I wanted to show you is this is that seam for the sky and the mountain. And as we come down here, so this is a 45 degree. And as we come down here, this is just going to be a straight seam. So where the mountains meet the water, or this could be kind of a assumed horizon line, those are always just straight seams. So for that, I had already cut down the blue fabric to the correct size. I'm just going to lay these on here, and then I'm going to come over and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam this way. Straight across, but I want to make sure I had my right sides together. Checking it, right sides. I'll go ahead and press this, and I'm going to technically set it aside because I am now going to start working on the diagonal sections of fabric that form all of the tree branches. And I think I promised you I would show you a really cool trick on how to make those work. So right now, I'm ready for the design wall parts over here, but both B sides are the same. So I already have a B side built. I'll bring into camera in a minute to see how that works. This one we're working with right now, and I'm going to follow the information over here. It says cut our strips, the blue and the green, at 16 inches wide. But then I'm going to trim them down to 8.5. I'm going to show you that when it's all done. So in order to make these work, I'm going to take my stack of greens, and I've just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 in this stack here. And then again, looking at the picture, I now want to pre-trim a 45-degree angle onto the edge. So what I like to do is I like to take and I like to put them like they're going to be in the picture. And then I use my little 5x15 ruler here, and I'm going to set this up. So if I set this here, I'm cutting a straight line up and down. So this is the wrong direction right now. So when I bring this around, it's going to cut right through here, and I want to cut right through those tips. Now, I should always try to cut right-handed or with my dominant hand, but this is set up right now for this. So I'm putting the cutter in my left hand and slowly and carefully making sure I have all 5 of those layers of fabric cut. I'm going to do the exact same to the blue. So once I figured out one, I didn't flip the ruler over. I'm just sliding it down. I'm going to line up my 45-degree line again. Oops. I said I wasn't going to change. Sliding it up to the corner. And this is our huge fabric saving trick. This will save you literally yards of cloth in this project. Okay, we won't need these triangles, so I'm going to set them over here. Now what I'm going to do, following the diagram, and not every one of these, I created the branches differently to make some character in the trees. So not always do they start with a blue piece or a green piece at top. So right here I'm starting with green up here, and the angle's coming down, and then the next piece I'm going to insert will be one of my blue pieces, and I'm going to set it so that they start up sewing just like this. So when I fold this over to go to the sewing machine, I literally have about 1/4 inch of the blue fabric hiding from underneath the green. And at this point, I'm going to recommend you take your edge guide and roll it back into position for your 1/4 inch, because we're going to do a lot of these seams at once. There we go. And I want them to be as accurate as possible. And let's go ahead and backstitch. It's always a good habit to have on this kind of work. And backstitching at the end. Oh my goodness, who left his mess all over here on the cutting board? That would be me again, or the ironing board. We do want to press after every seam. And I'm just pressing away from where I was working. So I was looking at the green, now I'm at the blue, pressing this open like this. But this is really cool because what I'm after is some sort of accuracy along this line. I've given you enough fabric that you can trim both sides, but I'm really, really happy right now with the way that turned out. Green, blue, next one's gonna be a green. So I'm gonna grab this. I'm going to set it to make sure that my lines are running correctly. When I fold over for my seam allowance, there's that 1/4 inch sneaking out from underneath here. And I head to the machine and I do it all again until I've made the entire section that I need. And then I'm going to trim it on down. But I do have lots I want to show you, and I already have a piece trimmed down at the design wall. So I tell you what, why don't we all go to the design wall together and talk about where you're going to see these elements coming together, and I'll grab what we need. Okay, so as we're over here now, I want you to see that I have been playing, I have been building, and I just started on the edge of the paper and I made each strip as you see, but the sections have to stop when I go to introduce my new diagonal or my branch sections. So this was the one strip with the sky and all the way into the tree trunk, but this was still just 45 seams. Here's a branch section I've already stitched into 2 strips that formed the rest of the background. This is the strip that I just made with you over there a moment ago. We're going to first need to put these 4 strips together so that they're the same width as this diagonal. So I'm going to actually, let's do those first, and then we'll come back and put all of this in. And that's when we'll talk about the trimming. So I'm going to make sure that these come off the wall in order so that I can sew them together. And if you're not sure, just lay them back on your table while you're working. And the thing I need to do, here, let's point this out. It might even be easier for you to see. Like this. I'm watching the line of the mountains come together, but this is going to stair step this way so that that next piece fits in here on the angle. So while I'm sewing these together, I'm making sure I'm lining up my top pieces very nicely. So I'm going to fold this over. I want to make sure I keep my eye on my next piece as I insert, and I still have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now as I begin sewing, my fingers are now tending to the join between the purple and the blue on both strips. And I'm just making sure those come together. And then the next piece I'm going to be feeling for is way down here where the 2 blue pieces are meeting the 2 purple pieces. And now I'm just hanging on to these. Well, that doesn't sound very good. I forgot to put my thread stand back up when I went to the design wall. So I'm going to rethread and be right back. Well, that was actually more timely than I expected, because while I rethreaded the machine, I actually bounced ahead forward and I put all of these seams together also because it was the next thing we really needed to do. So I want to point out again, what we've done is we've sewn across the top, and that is going to create this stagger or this stair step across the bottom. Now, what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to run over to the design wall and I'm going to grab that section of tree branches that fits in here and the other bottom section too. So we just need this one here. And then I also had this one built. So while I bring it back into place, I'm just double checking in my diagram over there that this is going to go ahead and sew right through here. I don't want you to cut these and trim these first. I want to sew this line in place, and that's going to help us remain more accurate. And before I can show you that step though, I want to talk about how this was trimmed down. So let's go back to these strips we were building. These ones we were building just for the other side. And you can see that they're considerably wider. What I did is I took my ruler, I made sure that I had the 45-degree mark on one side, and I first trimmed down the side here nice and clean. And then I used a larger ruler, an 8.5 inch wide, which I happen to have, and I cut the other side 8.5 inches wide, which will run perfectly parallel, and that happens to fit in perfectly with our 4 strips that we just put together from the other elements of the background. So even though you've done a beautiful job sewing this, trim this first, and then go across and use your 8.5 or whichever other sizes we've listed here in those A, B, C diagrams on your branches. I'm hoping that makes some fantastic sense. Now, this is going to be an easy one to build, but again, it's like our 45. It is a 45, so when it's sewing together, it's going through here. And I want you to kind of see what I'm seeing, what I'm looking at while I'm doing this. I like to pull this down to this bottom corner. This is that flat. If you were using regular half square triangles, we would have that little edge lapping over there as well. And then I'm going to run a 1/4 inch seam allowance as I go through here. This wouldn't be a terrible place if you wanted to put a couple of pins to make sure that it all stays secure. And before I even try to bring that over, I'm going to slide my edge guide back up and out of the way, so that we come through here, and my goal is to come out of a 1/4 inch seam allowance right on that corner that's hidden down under here that looks like this. So I have a cheat up here, I'm looking at this across here, making sure it stays crisp, and now I'm heading over to the machine. I'm just going to sew nice and slow, keeping my eye on the edge of the presser foot, on the edge of the fabric. And I haven't let go of this bottom corner, making sure that everything's looking good there. And then I should be coming out right about the corner of the blue strip of fabric. As we do, and as I fold this open, you can see that that marries them in nicely. Now, I can press this down to lay it a little bit flat. I accidentally, when I was telling you I wasn't holding it, I ended up letting go. So I think what I would like to do later is come in and just open those few inches. If you have any of these little weird puckers, just take those few inches back and finish that sewing. But I have it set up to show you this all over again, so let's do that instead. So at any rate, here's the bottom angle. And a reminder, what you're looking at here, these are 4 strips that were put together, but these were from the bottom elements. Those are these bottom elements down here. So when I was putting those together, because I wanted the stair step to come upward, I started by sewing along the bottom seam. All of these were sewn up to create the stair step. And this is going to go in here like this, just the same. And maybe I should even take a second and let's press this. It's been in the suitcase a while. To make sure everything's nice and flat. Because once this element's done, we're just about ready to go to start building it out. So we're going to take this, I'm going to fold it over so we can see where we are going. You can go either direction, whatever easiest. I like to be looking at the long angle, the straight line, as it goes over. So I'm going to slide this back down, looking for this corner first, giving myself that about that 1/4 inch that pops out down there, lining this up across my stair steps. There we go, and heading to the machine again. So I come out on that side there. Oh yeah, that one came out all but perfect. Fantastic. And I can even tell by looking at that how nice that has been managed. So then the next thing I want to do before I even go back to putting that on the design wall or even the ironing board is I'm going to come in here and I'm just using my ruler to protect my hands. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that like that, get those little pieces out of there. I would have done the same to the top, but like I said, I'm going to fix that later on my own time. Let's go back over to the design wall to show you how this is going to fit in though. This is really cool. So now this element itself, because the diagonal has already been inserted, then I can go ahead now and I can put these pieces together, even though you'll be wisest to build out your whole entire quilt and then put all of your long rows together. But this is how it works. Once your diagonals are set, then this piece is a unit and you can put it right back into the quilt as you go. Now, looking at the quilt itself, for the free motion machine quilting, this is really, really fun, and I did it as free motion style, but a lot of it is straight line technique. I started at about the center of the quilt, and the first things I did is I went just around the sewing you see here of the tree from the center all the way around. My goal was to give some lift into the trees to make them stand out of the quilt a little bit more, so the only quilting they get is just around the outside edges. Once those were done, then I loaded a blue thread in and I began right up here with kind of my horizon, and I began stitching in these fun swirls. I want this to feel like water, so there's some side-to-side lateral motion there and then some swirls to kind of pick up that water feel. And I was able to travel back around even in to fill in the spaces between the tree branches. But when you're filling in those spaces, make sure you're still just going side to side, not up and down, because you're giving the ripples and the water effect. Once all of this was done, Then I went back to the horizon and I started to cut around the mountains. And I basically cut straight lines up and around the mountains, and then periodically went back in and cut some more diagonal lines just to look like valleys and, you know, little areas where the runoff would be in our mountains. And finally finishing the free motion quilting up in the blue, starting down in one of the valleys. But I started putting in what I think is some fun, like wind swirl style technique, some real fun and whimsical free motion for the sky, because we all know that the elements of the quilting just help finish off telling the stories we are trying to portray in our fantastic quilts. So, very basic steps to make an incredible quilt when you're done. And what I really hoped you learned from me today was how maybe you could take some of your own graph paper, play with some simple 45-degree and straight 90-degree lines, and you could create your own fantastic pieced, scenic quilts like we've done here today. So thanks again for following along. We really appreciate having you each and every Monday right here at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.